The 19th session of the Senate in the second regular session of the 16th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Sergio Osmeña III will lead the chamber in prayer.
God of power and wisdom, send us your Holy Spirit so that he may counsel us with the fortitude, righteousness, justice, and mercy that our duties demand. We pray that as leaders we may guide the public towards a more prosperous and united nation. We ask for your guidance as we govern the Filipino people, that we may uplift their lives and deliver the public service that they deserve. Lord, we pray for all figures in authority, that every decision that they make shall be for the greater good. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Osmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Trilon.
16? Huh? 16 senators answered the call. The chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. With the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 18th Session, September 9, 2014, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none. The reading of the Journal of Session number 18, Tuesday, September 9, 2014, is hereby dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business.
Senate number 2402, entitled An Act Providing for the Upgrade and Modernization as well as increasing the bed capacity of the Severo Veralio Memorial District Hospital at Taytayan, City of Bogo, Province of Cebu, from 50 to 100 bed capacity and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Committee on Rules.
Senate number 2403, an act establishing the Mariveles District Hospital in the municipality of Mariveles, Province of Bataan, and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Rules.
Senate number 2404, an act increasing the minimum bed capacity of the Zamboanga City Medical Center from 250 to 500, amending for the purpose Section 2 of Republic Act number 7272 by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Rules.
Senate number 2405, an act converting the Northern Samar Provincial Hospital in Catarman, Northern Samar, into the Samar Island Medical Center under the supervision, control, and management of the Department of Health, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Rules.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 902, directing the proper committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the legality and cost efficiency of constructing the LRT-1 common station beside Trinoma Mall instead of SM North EDSA by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Works and Public Services.
PS Resolution number 903, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported controversies involving the public-private partnership projects of the government, in particular, the Cavite Laguna Expressway project by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Works.
PS Resolution number 904, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported need for the government to inform and prepare the public for a possible 7.5 magnitude earthquake that will devastate northern Luzon and the Cordillera region by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Science and Technology, Public Information, Mass Media.
PS Resolution number 905, directing the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee to investigate in aid of legislation the alleged kickbacks from excessive, exorbitant, and unconscionable legal fees of foreign and local legal consultants hired by the present administration for arbitration proceedings by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy SB9.
Accountability of public officers and investigations.
Yes, Resolution number 906, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct inquiry of legislation on the alleged anomalous transactions involving multi-billion pesos in public funds between Hillmarks Construction Corporation and certain local government units by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Accountability of public officers and investigations.
Yes, Resolution number 907, expressing the sense of the Senate that it has full trust and confidence in the Secretary of Interior and Local Government as the head of law enforcement and crime prevention in the country by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Rules.
Yes, Resolution number 908, urging the Philippine National Police to maintain and operate an improved 24/7 dedicated direct national emergency hotline to address crime situations and assistance, an avenue for citizens' predicaments and similar other peace and order issues on a real-time, proactive engagement by Senator Grace Poe.
Public order and dangerous drugs.
Yes, Resolution number 909, commending the Gilas Pilipinas basketball team in the 2014 FIBA Basketball World Cup held in Spain for ending a 36-year winless drought since 1978, earning world respect by showing the true value of teamwork and puso in showcasing the Philippine brand of basketball to the world by Senator Grace Poe.
Rules.
Communications from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15A of Republic Act No. 7653, the New Central Bank Act, Memorandum Numbers M 2014-031 and 32 dated 8 and 11 August 2014, and Circular Number 844 dated 11 August 2014.
With banks, financial institutions, and colleges.
Mr. President, I move that we acknowledge and recognize the presence of the following who are here with us today in the session hall. Criminology students from Metro Manila College, Quezon City. May I ask them to rise to be recognized?
We recognize the students of the Metro Manila College, Quezon City. We make their presence spread in the record.
We have the students from the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila College of Law, headed by our favorite law dean, Dean Ernesto P. Maceda Jr.
The students of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila College of Law, led by Dean Ernesto Maceda Jr. We are reminded of that saying, the spring rises higher than its source.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome to the Senate.
Members of the JCI Alaminos Coramblan, led by Chapter President Ms. Ruby Pasural.
The JCs of Alaminos, led by Ruby Pascual, Chapter President of Caram.
Apologies, Pascual, Mr. President.
Welcome to the Senate.
Then, Mr. President, members of the Peace Education Network, Director Loretta Castro, Attorney Christine Lau, and Director Hasmin Galase. These are visitors also of Senator Grace Poe, Mr. President.
Our visitors from the Peace Education Network, led by Director Loretta Castro, Attorney Lau, and Director Galase, are recognized, and their presence is made of record.
Lastly, but definitely not the least, Mr. President, Human Resource Management students from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines main campus, Santa Mesa, Manila, headed by Professor Elmer Soriano and their class representative, Harry Nunez.
The students of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, led by Professor Soriano and Harry Nunez, are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we recognize the resilient senator, Senator Loren Legarda, to be recognized to speak on a matter of public interest.
Senator Legarda is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. September being the month of Typhoon Ondoy on September 26, and just a week before the President addresses the United Nations General Assembly in New York on September 23rd on the Climate Change Summit, and 2 months before the memory of November 8 of Typhoon Haiyan happens, this representation, as chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committees, would like to share with you the resilience to natural hazards and climate change and the building of resilience as an attitude campaign. I have the honor to share with you, Mr. President, key issues discussed during the Innovation and Learning in a Changing Asia Conference organized by the Asian Development Bank, where I was a panelist for the session Natural Hazards and Climate Change, along with 2 Nobel laureates who are members of the IPCC, along with Vice President Al Gore. Citizens of the Asia-Pacific region are more likely to be affected by natural hazards than those in Africa, Europe, or North America, says a report from the UN Office for Disaster Reduction. In many countries, poverty, badly planned and managed urban and regional development, informal settlements on unsafe lands, vulnerable rural and urban livelihoods, ecosystems decline. These are the underlying drivers that increase the risks of these hazards turning into disasters. And even as we confront these challenges, the impact of the Earth's warming temperature already looms over us. We've already warned that if global temperatures increase by 4 degrees Celsius, coastal cities, like where we are now, will be inundated. Dry regions, like the northern part of the country, will become drier, while wet regions will become wetter. There will be extreme heat wave. There will be water scarcity, stronger tropical cyclones, perhaps a strong or even as strong or stronger than Typhoon Haiyan, and the loss of biodiversity, which is already happening. The IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, said that poverty alleviation and achieving food security will become increasingly difficult. Therefore, new poverty traps will arise as existing obstacles remain, and economic growth will slow down because of climate change. We've actually seen this, how Typhoon Ondoy ate up 2.7% of our GDP, how previous typhoons and Habagat ate up 0.8% of our GDP. Faced with these difficulties, it is a must that development policy should promote effective disaster risk reduction towards sustainable and resilient growth. Here in the Philippines, our laws are unequivocal in mainstreaming DRR and CCA in development plans, our programs, and budgets, especially now that we are discussing our annual budget. The Philippine Disaster Risk Management Act maintains or mandates a paradigm shift from reactive to proactive that will strengthen our defense against disasters. The Philippine Climate Change Act, 5 years ago, its recently amended law, the PSF, which thankfully is now in the programmed fund budget of 1 billion pesos. Even our budget policies reflect strengthened disaster risk reduction and management efforts. But aside from increased allocation for DRR investments in the national budget, the previously called Calamity Fund, which was intended only for response or post-disaster activities, has been renamed as the NDREAMC Fund, which now can be used by LGUs for mangrove reforestation, for solid waste management projects, for flood control projects, for disaster preparedness. Laws, however, Mr. President, are just part of the equation, and their implementation through good governance could really spell the big difference. Solutions for climate and resource risks entails investing in water supply, sanitation, flood control, transport, roads, social services, health, energy infrastructure that build resilience to climate variability. A new study done by the Environmental Business International estimates that in the next 7 years, the annual market for climate adaptation services will grow by 12 to 20%, per year, becoming a 700 million annual market in the United States and $2 billion globally. In the case of Pakistan, for example, the JICA has calculated that if DRR investment is ensured, approximately 25% more economic growth is projected for the year 2042 compared to the case without DRR investment. It has been said, in fact, that for every dollar spent on DRR, you actually save $7 more. We therefore need to promote a new approach in dealing with climate change and disaster risk reduction that would not only protect the environment but would also reap development benefits. To adapt to the new norm requires from us a change in perspective, a change in mindset, a change in the way we think, in the way we do, and in essence, building resilience is an attitude. Perhaps, and more so, perhaps even in the change in our attitude towards our annual budget. With this kind of mindset, we can promote the scaling up of existing government programs to rectify the social economic structures that breed disaster risk and trap the poor in this so-called vicious cycle of risk and poverty. The private sector will likewise be encouraged to put disaster resilience at the core of their business strategies and to promote green policies. The heightened engagement of the business sector in DRR is crucial in preventing substantial business losses and economic development setbacks resulting from disasters of unprecedented scale. We've seen this in Yolanda-affected areas, which is more than 40 provinces all over the country. While heavy and excessive rainfall is part of the new norm, as experienced right now in India, in Pakistan, in China, in Germany, etc., even in the Philippines, we cannot remain passive to the growing risk that disrupts our social and economic activities. We must reduce the vulnerability and the exposure of our people and our economy to the impact of natural hazards if we are to reduce poverty and to develop steadily as a nation. The road towards this goal may be tough, but with the attitude of resilience and a strong resolve, we will be able to weather the many challenges of our fast-changing environment. And just to close this, Mr. President, perhaps 8 months away from Sendai on March 2015, where all the world leaders will meet and assess the 15-year HFA or the Yoga Framework for Action, where the world once again will project what it needs to do to make our world more resilient. They would focus on, first, preventing the risk, and second, reducing the risk, and third, to make sure that there is no decline in our ecosystems, and to make sure this attitude of building and enhancing resilience is embraced by all global leaders and every community. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Legarda. Senator Honasan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentle lady from the Philippines tolerate some clarificatory questions?
Of course, Mr. President, I thank you for standing. I would love to hear your voice. It's been quite some time since I've heard your voice. And one of the green eco-warriors of this chamber, who together we authored the Clean Air Act and many other environmental measures.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Honor, I would like to deal briefly with the policy issues. First, beyond what is prescribed in the Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act, of which you and I have been part of, along with many in this chamber, can we identify a receptacle, a repository of the data and information that will allow us to address this in the long term on a long-term policy basis?
Mr. President, we already have 8 major environmental laws. The database that the good senator is asking for may be found in any of the implementing agencies of these 8 environmental laws. And I believe that the challenge of the present and the future is in the effective and judicious and implementation of all these laws. I'm speaking about the Climate Change Act, where each community must by now have the national must have local action plans that would adhere to the National Climate Change Action Plan. So the database of this would be the Climate Change Commission. When we speak about vulnerabilities, when we speak about geohazards, the database of this information, Mr. President, would be the Mines and Geosciences Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. If we speak about the total particulate matter of the air quality, perhaps, for example, we would have to seek the information from the Environment Management Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. When we speak about the implementation of the Clean Water Act, and we would need to know the quality of the marine resources in our country, then we would have to ask perhaps the bodies regulating these water systems, the LLDA insofar as the Laguna Lake development of the Laguna Lake is involved, or the EMB for other matters, or perhaps even local governments. So depending on the ecosystem, whether it is terrestrial or marine or air, etc., this would really depend on which agency is mandated to oversee the protection of such an ecosystem.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for that, Your Honor. Your Honor, I ask this question because it leads to the next question, which is beyond, again, what is prescribed in the DRRMA. Do these agencies coordinate or meet regularly so that the legislature can be guided accordingly as we hammer out a common agenda for the management of disasters, especially post-disaster management?
Yes, Mr. President, they are mandated to meet continuously, regularly, and report to the Senate. The fact that annually we review the performance of these government agencies and allocate to them their budget, they must report to us. In the oversight committees of the Senate, Clean Water, Clean Air, Solid Waste Management Law, the Oversight Committee on Climate Change, and the NDREAM-C law, which is subsumed under the Defense Committee, yes, they must report everything that is discussed within their turf, depending again on which they cover. But the NDREAM-C is a council. I believe that there should be a permanent body established by law to create a fiercer, a better body which has the power to really prepare for natural hazards, which so they don't have to turn into disasters.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that, Your Honor. Just a few more questions, Mr. President. Your Honor, is it your sense from where you sit that disaster risk reduction management is precisely situated in our national order of priorities in the long term? Whoever is managing it, whoever is president, whoever sits in Congress, some sort of, if I may add, some sort of sustainability and predictability in the long term.
I believe, Mr. President, that both on the national and local level, and whether you are in the legislature or any branch of government, DRR should be embraced as something that should be part of the ordinary, as part of our daily lives. We've seen it and how it impacts on our health, how it impacts on livelihood, on jobs, how it negatively impacts on our GDP, how it impacts on the loss of lives. We don't have to be convinced anymore because crisis upon crisis have happened due to our lack of preparedness and perhaps due to our lack of understanding of what DRR actually means. So I believe, Mr. President, that this should be part of the national agenda. This should be one of the top, if not the top priority of any government leader, of any leader in the private sector and in the business community, Mr. President. It should be taught in schools. It should be part of education. It should be part of health. It should be part, of course, of the conservation of our natural wealth. In fact, I am challenging the way we measure our growth. While not only the Philippines, but traditional economists would always measure growth by 7%, but we actually measure the cost of extractive industries? Do we actually measure the cost to health of our various economic activities? Do we actually measure the wear and tear, so to speak, of the industries to which we attribute this growth? So my challenge, Mr. President, is to redefine development so that the redefinition of this development should include environmental sustainability, should include the impact on culture and heritage. It should impact on the wealth of the soil that is extracted and that is finite and cannot be rehabilitated, resuscitated, and even the impact on its people, the social impact. And so my challenge is for our economists, our finance experts, and our leaders to redefine development not in the traditional way. Because where has it brought us? It has brought us deeper in the pits of starvation, poverty, and we always simply have to recover and rehabilitate. And I can see that the kind of development that we have engendered and in all these decades have not benefited the most marginalized and the most vulnerable in our country and even in the world.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last few questions and comments. Your Honor, with your continued indulgence, can you please, Your Honor, give us an idea on the eve of plenary deliberations on the General Appropriations Act, the resources, the funding we are allocating to the overall disaster risk reduction, hazard, natural or otherwise? How much are we allocating to this effort, assuming that we have precisely situated this in our national order of priorities and it will be reflected in the budget? How much in broad strokes are we allocating? So
first, Mr. President, thank you for that very relevant question. Each LGU must have their calamity fund, which has been named as NDREAM-C Fund, which means that they should not use it only in a post-disaster activity, but can be used for disaster preparedness. Second, each agency like DA, DNR should have mainstreamed climate change adaptation projects and activities into their budget. And third, I would like to actually measure DRR and CCA in each agency so that when we pass the budget, the 1.4 trillion budget, we will be able to say X percentage of the total budget was devoted to disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. I believe in the Department of Environment, they had geotagged their projects. I hope that in other similar agencies, they can geotag it so that this tagging of DRR and CCA activities should make it easier for us to measure what percentage of our total budget will be devoted to DRR and CCA.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, finally, as a comment, I ask the permission of the acting minority floor leader to make these remarks. Your Honor, although the minority floor leader and I are not competitive anymore in the charm and looks department, we would like to observe that you are looking lovely this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh my. Ano?
The minority leader is recognized.
I move to strike off the record the statement of the Assistant Minority Leader, particularly the portion when he says that I am no longer competitive in looks and charms. Let him speak for himself, Mr. President.
The chair objects.
Mr. President, allow me to just correct myself. It's at 1.6, it's 2.6 in terms of the budget. I thank the good senator for his kind remarks.
If you object, Mr. President, I withdraw the motion.
All right, the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Trillanes is willing to lead an investigation to find out whether Senator Soto is still competitive in terms of charm. But for the record, Mr. President, his award-winning show, Itbulaga, is not only Apari hanggang Hulo, it is making waves in Indonesia, no, the franchise. Anyway, Mr. President, we thank the good senator who has continuously reminded this chamber about our duties to the environment. Mr. President, I move to refer the committee and the manifestations and the interpellation to the Climate Change Committee, Mr. President. Climate Change Committee. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of the House Bill number 694 under Committee Report number 57. This is the Military Veterans Benefits Bill, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures that we're in the period of interpellation, I thus move that we recognize Senator Trillanes to sponsor the said measure.
Senator Trillanes, the principal sponsor of the measure, is recognized.
Mr. President, with the permission of the sponsor, may this representation ask 2 or 3 questions to clarify the provisions of this act.
The Majority Leader has the floor to raise on the period of interpellation.
Yes, Mr. President, this sponsor would be so honored by the interpellation of the Majority Floor Leader, Mr. President.
Firstly, Mr. President, just to clarify, this House Bill under Committee Report number 57 refers to military veterans. So is this different from the benefits that active members of the armed forces will get?
Yes, Mr. President, it is different from the death benefits of active personnel, Mr. President.
And I believe that the sponsor is also studying a bill about the death benefits of active uniformed personnel. So I will not ask him about what benefits they get at this time. But am I correct that the sponsor has either authored or is going to author also some remedial legislation to improve the conditions of benefits of the members of the armed forces who unfortunately are either hurt or are killed in action?
Yes, Mr. President, this sponsor has filed a bill increasing the death benefits of those killed or wounded in action, as well as those active members of the armed forces of the Philippines, Mr. President.
And maybe later on the sponsor can also introduce the gentlemen, the Honorable Yusek and the generals behind you. Will this be the same resource persons who will also make some computations for the benefits of the active active members of the AFP in case they are killed in action?
Yes, Mr. President, with us this afternoon to assist us in the sponsorship of this measure is Undersecretary Harulina of the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office and General Macanas of the Retirees and Reservist Affairs, Mr. President.
Thank you, Sir Senator, Mr. President. And as I said, I will take this up when you sponsor your other bill, or I might be filing a certain version. May I just be allowed to bring this up to the attention of the good sponsor who has devoted a lot of his time to the welfare of the uniformed services and to the gentlemen behind him. I am of the belief that we truly consider members of the armed forces who are killed in action as heroes. No? However, when they are killed in action or when they are hurt and they can no longer work, they do get a pension and they get a benefit, but their family suffers. As an example, Mr. President, I asked the gentleman who used to be in the Armed Forces of the Philippines, at what average age does a PMAyer graduate? He said 23. No? So, for example, a PMAyer becomes second lieutenant, is sent to an area of the country where there's an armed conflict, and he's killed at the age of 25. No? He will get some benefits, they will get a pension, but in the meantime, yung kanyang byuda at yung kanyang mga anak, no, will be suffering not only the companionship, the guidance of the padre de familia, but also they will be deprived of his monthly pay, the benefits that he will get as he is promoted. No? So I communicated to the new chief of staff when he was here yesterday, no, that we would like to coordinate with you and the generals, no, in charge, that they should receive whatever they're receiving now, but the soldier who died in action should continue to get paid as if he was alive. Because if he was alive and he was serving the armed forces, he would be paid. But he's not being paid because he died. And he did not die because napabayaan niya sarili niya, but because he was fighting for the country. No? So let me just communicate this to Senator Trillanes because he has been championing this. And I think it is but a symbolic gesture, because even the pay of a soldier would not be enough really to send the 4 children or 3 children to the best schools of the country. God forbid that anyone in the family will also be sickly. No? But let me leave that area and just communicate that to you personally, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. President, the sponsor welcomes the insights of the majority leader, and we would gladly coordinate with his staff to further refine the proposed measures that we have at this point, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. President. I'm just waiting. We will be coordinating also with the AFP. I just want to get the number of soldiers killed in action, maybe the last 5 years, so we can calculate if it is economically or financially viable to have such a proposal, and maybe together with the men and even the former military officers who are now in the civilian positions like the USEX and ASEX can be able to contribute to that. Having said that, Mr. President, this bill increases from 10,000 to 20,000 the burial assistance. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. President.
May I ask, Mr. President, how much the average burial expenses is nowadays for any citizen of the country? No?
For 2014, may I ask for clarification regarding the last question? The cost of
interment. I mean, yung pong lamay, yung pong babayaran sa punerarya, yung pong mga permits, yung lote. So I would assume, Mr. President, it's between what, 50 to 150,000?
From 50,000, it depends on the kind of memorial chapels that you would employ or you would utilize. But on the average, it's around 25,000 and up, Mr. President.
And do all veterans get the privilege of being interned in the Libingan ng Bayani, or do some of them have to buy their own lots in the cemetery?
All of them are entitled a burial spot in the Libingan ng Bayani, Mr. President.
But if they choose, if I'm not mistaken, the Libingan or the military memorial is only in Metro Manila. Is that correct?
Yes. Mr.
So unlike in the US that they have it all over, so if you are a soldier from the Ilocos region or Bisaya or a Mindanaoan and your family would want you to be buried with your family, with the remains of your family, they will have to pay for their own lot sa hometown po nila. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Mr. President?
yes, Mr. President.
Yes. So having said that, I would estimate anywhere between 50 to 150,000, and that would be a modest burial expense, because we know that yung lampong kabaong can go as much as $500,000 or 1 million depending on the design and the make, no? So the 25,000 for the funeral services are what do you call this, very, very humble, no? Or as I said, no, it's one of the, yung mas mura na po yan, no?
Yes, Mr. President.
I ask this, Mr. President, because I do believe we have a lack of resources, but I'd like to find out magkano magiging out of pocket nung veteran kapag ka nalibing siya. So if he gets this 20,000 from the Veterans Affairs, does he also get any other assistance from any other, hindi po sila member ng GOCC, di ba? Ng GSIS, because they have their own retirement agency, di ba, yung military. Will he get any amount from that, for example?
They won't. They're not entitled to any other benefits, Mr. President, aside from this one.
Well, I will not prolong the questioning, and I know the sponsor have studied this and is making the amount feasible. But let me just put it on record that I think anyway, USEC, the Undersecretary who's head of the Veterans Affairs is here, no? And USEC Carolina is here, and they can probably compute in the next 10 years or what are the average number of veterans who pass away every year, and we can compute how much. Because personally, I feel that because of their service to the nation, dapat completely libre na at a minimum amount, no? Meaning kung gusto lang mas maganda, mas magarbo, mas maganda yung funeral chapel, dadagdagan ng pamilya. But if a veteran dies at a old age and mahirap din yung pamilya, nangyayari umuutang paminsan, mapalibing lang yung veterano, and it's sad, no? And by the way, Mr. President, even in the US, no, with so much support for the military, you watch in the movies that there are veterans who die in the park or in shelters, and even them with their vast resources sometimes grasp for more resources to give their troops and veterans a decent send-off, no, or burial, no. So although I will not object and I will support completely this measure because I know this is the feasible amount at this point in time, maybe we can also have an idea, at least in the budget hearing, and maybe we can include in this law, Mr. President, a provision that allows the bureaucracy to increase the amount if the amounts are available. Meaning, Mr. President, if in the future General Appropriations Act, they can afford to give the whole 50,000 or the whole 30,000, we don't have to file another bill. So maybe this bill can set a minimum of 20,000, but subject to internal rules and funding, that the Veterans Affairs will be able to increase it by themselves, no? Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, I so agree with the statements of the majority leader. But for the information of the body, the average number of veterans who are dying every year would be around 5,000 to 6,000. But it is expected to increase exponentially because the World War II veterans are dying at a much faster pace. So with this number, we're looking at a figure of 112 million pesos only, Mr. President, from the current 60 million plus. So we're just increasing from 60 to 112 million, Mr. President. That is for the 20,000 peso increase. So it's very much manageable from the financial point of view. And just to state also for the record that this bill will only equalize the death benefits of the soldiers with that of the beneficiaries from the GSIS, which are now receiving 20,000 pesos also in death benefits, Mr. President.
And I would assume, Mr. President, that those who have served the country, in the sense, every GSIS member has one way or the other served the country because they are civil servants. But we should give a premium to members of the police, the BGMP, the NBI, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, because not only did they give their strength and hindi lang po yung talino nila, hindi lang po yung lakas, but yung buhay talaga nila ang binigay nila, because they leave their house not knowing if they will come back alive, you know. Of course, our prayers are always with them, but that is the reality in the profession that you yourself have chosen, dear Senator, and to our dear colleagues in the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Having said that, Mr. President, may I just also put on record that the private sector should also do their part. In certain establishments, in certain states around the United States of America, if you show your badge, the establishments will automatically give you a discount. So even not only the FBI, not only the state police, sometimes even because even the bail bondsmen, no, yung po mga nagbibigay ng bond para makapiyansa, may tsapa din po sa ano yan parang bounty hunter. Sila po may automatically minsan 5 to 20% discount kahit sa malalaking malls, no? I'll not name them because I'm not sure at this point in time, but I was surprised that even in the biggest malls in the US, pag dumadaan, ipapakita lang sa kahera yung tsapa at bibigyan na sila ng discount. Kumbaga parang yung senior citizen sa atin pag pinakita yung ID, because if some establishments does that for veterans, then it will also save the government from having to allot more funds. Of course, we can legislate that, but it's always best that they do it by themselves. Having said that, allow me to congratulate Senator Trillanes for another bill that, again, no, benefits the Armed Forces of the Philippines and uniformed personnel. He has done so in previous bills, and we continue to support that. I have no other questions, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you likewise to the Majority Floor Leader. And just to stress, it's always a collegial body, and the credit would always go to all the members of this august body, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Maybe we can be made co-authors also at the proper time, Mr. President. And at this point in time, Mr. President, no other member have signified their intention to seek clarificatory questions or avail of the period of interpellation. I move that we close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none, the period for interpellation on House Bill 694 is hereby terminated.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Allen.
Negative feedback sila dahil mali ang intindi.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period for committee and individual amendments.
The period for amendment is in order.
Mr. President, I was informed that there are no committee amendments, and there were no senators who signified that they wish to propose individual amendments. So I move that we close the period for amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, the period for amendments is hereby terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 694 under Committee Report number 57.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill number 694 under Committee Report number 57 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 694 under Committee Report number 57.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Sir President, I ask for a minute suspension.
Suspended for 1 minute.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 914 under Committee Report number 13. This is the chemistry bill, Mr. President.
Consideration of Senate Bill 914 under Committee Report number 13 is in order.
Sir President, the status of the measure is that we are in the period of individual amendments. I thus move that we recognize Senator Antonio Trillanes.
Senator Trillanes is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sir President, there are no senator has signified their intention to propose amendments. I therefore move that we close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, so terminated.
A minute suspension, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 914 under Committee Report number 13.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 914 under Committee Report number 13 is approved on second reading.
Sir President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 914 under Committee Report number 13.
So suspended.
Sir President, we have accomplished our agenda for today except for the Fair Competition Act, Senate Bill number 2282 under Committee Report number 56. But this is also due to our agreement to give time to the other senators to formulate their amendments, and we will be taking this up on Monday. On that note, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 15, 2014.
Session is adjourned until 3 p.m. of Monday, September 15, 2014.